Hey, Kevin here from DIYDork.com. Today I want to show you a really cool makeover I did on a $10 thrift store table using some scrap wood and a torch. So check this out. Alright, check out this table I picked up for 10 bucks at the Goodwill. It's pretty decent shape for 10 bucks. It's got a real wood base. It's got a little hint of mid-century styling to it. A little bit of a taper to the legs. I think they're stained, but it almost looks like paint. I'm not crazy about that color. I could sand them all the way down to raw wood, but it's probably going to be quicker just to paint them, but I haven't quite decided on that yet. Now the top, on the other hand, is not in good shape. It's particle board, laminate top. You can see the edge trim is gone. It's a little bit warped. And then the top has like chips and paint flecks all over it, scratches, and it's pretty rough, but overall the thing has good bones. It's 32 by 32, and I think what I'm going to do is rewrap the top in some scrap wood I've had sitting in my basement with a pretty cool little design. So let me show you what I'm thinking of doing. Alright, so here is the design that I come up with after I was playing with all these scrap boards. They are just leftover pieces of 1x6 that I've had laying in my basement. These are actually parts of the old flooring in one of our rooms in our house before we did renovations, and these are all the scraps left over of other projects I've built with them. And they're just long enough that I thought they'd be perfect for something, and it's going to work out great here. Now these triangles are the same wood, but these are actually cut-offs from that corner wall-mounted TV stand I just built not too long ago. I almost threw them away, but I thought I'd keep them just in case, and they're going to work perfect for this. So my plan is, of course, all these boards here, as you can see, are not the same length, so I'm going to take the shortest board, which I think is this one, and anyway, I will measure it, and then I will measure and mark the rest and chop them to that same length, so that way they all line up here and at the edge of the table, just so it's for, easy installation. Now they are a little bit wide, so once I get them lined up and centered, whatever's overhanging here, I'll have to trim off with the table saw, but that would be pretty easy. All right, so then for the triangles, a couple of them are a little bit narrow, so I might have to cut a couple of new ones so that they're the same width as these boards, just so they line up and look good. All right, so my plan is to take the bigger boards here, and I'm going to put a light char on them, all right, just like this with a torch. And I'm usually not crazy about that look. It reminds me of like an early 90s country craft store look, and I don't know, it's kind of popular again now, but I never was crazy about it, but I think it'll look cool this way. And then for the triangles, what I'm going to do is take a torch to them and completely char them. So this isn't paint, this isn't stained, this is completely burnt with the torch. So I think there's a lot of contrast going there, which could actually look kind of cool. So you got your wood grain torched, and then you're completely charred and blackened. So anyway, it'll be like that. And then for the chevron zigzag leftover, I'm going to use some more pieces of this wood and cut them to fit, and then I'm going to do them in a distressed silver paint. All right, and I'll do my edge banding in the same thing. So that way it has that kind of an aluminum look to it, which should be kind of cool, and it'll be an easy way to fill that in. And then for the leg base, I'm not quite sure just yet. Like I said, I might sand them down, I might paint them, I don't know yet. But anyway, the very first thing I got to do is take all this off, and I got to deal with that laminate top. If I just try to glue and nail the boards to it, the glue's not really going to stick, so I got to rough it up somehow. So I'm going to try my tried and true method of taking a grinder and just grinding this thing all over the place and exposing some of that particle board underneath so that the glue has something to stick to. It doesn't look good, it's not really the right way to do it, but for a quick flip on this on a cheap table, it'll work just fine. So I got to do that, but actually before I do that, I got to clean my workspace. Alright, so hopefully my camera captured that last scene. It was so cold that it just shut off. I guess the battery went dead or something. But anyway, I took the grinder and I ground up the top. Like I said, it's not going to be pretty, but it should work. There's enough wood exposed now that the glue will stick. Also did the edges as well. They actually had a really thin wood band around there that was painted black, so I just ground all that black paint off so I can put trim on there. So now what I've done, it's probably a little hard to see, but I found center and I drew a line so that way I can build my wood blocks outwards, and then whatever's hanging over here I can just trace underneath and cut off. So what I'll do next is go ahead and go through my blocks, take my shortest one and mark all the others so I can cut them to length, and then I can lay them on here, and then like I said, I can figure out where to trim off the edges and get those going. Alright, so there's all of my end pieces all cut and sanded. They're looking pretty good. I have one missing here because it had a split all the way down, so I actually glued it and then have it clamped, letting it dry before I install it. But anyway, what I'm doing now is just make sure they all line up. You can see how they overlap the edge just a little bit, so I'll eventually trace them and cut those down. But right now I'm just fitting all the triangles. So these are all the pieces that actually fit. My others are either too small or I was missing some, so I'm going to have to cut the rest. So I'll do that, then I'll make sure test fit everything, and then I can trim the edges and start torching everything. Alright, check it out. I got all my pieces cut, brought them back in, laid them in place. You can see they sit nice and flush with the rest of the table, so they look real good. They're ready to get torched. So what I'm going to use is my little propane torch here. Works real nice. You just got to be careful. It's kind of easy to burn it if you're not careful, so I'll kind of show you a little trick. So what I've learned is that it seems to be easier if you torch towards you. So basically you're pulling the torch back, because if you move forward, you can't quite see what you're doing. It's easy to kind of scorch it. You got to be real careful. It's almost like spray painting. You know, if you hold a spray can too long, it'll build up and then start to run. But the torch will do the same thing, except it'll really start burning. So you just got to be real careful and go light, and just kind of almost like working the wet edge of paint, except you're working the burnt edge, and you come back towards you. If you have to do a second coat, that's okay. For the triangles here that I'm going to char, it's a little easier because we're going to totally blacken them. So you just got to make sure they're totally black. And anyway, you also want to do this outside because it's going to make a lot of smoke. I mean, they could catch on fire. You just want to be real careful. So I'll take them out there and show you how I do it. Alright, so I was going to take my pieces outside, but it's just way too windy, so the flame on the torch was like blowing sideways, and I just wasn't getting a real even look. So anyway, I brought them here in the basement, and hopefully the lighting is okay and that my heater's not too loud that's running right now. But anyway, one thing I want to point out is that if you do use your torch inside, that it does create carbon monoxide, so you need to be real careful. Make sure it's ventilated. So I have my basement door wide open. It's getting cold in here, but I want to have as much fresh air as I can. Alright, so like I said, I found it seems to work best if I pull it towards me. So I come back here, and then it seems to work best also if you go with the grain. It seems like it kind of burns into the grain a little bit that way. So anyway, let me show you what I'm doing here. As you'll see, it'll still be a little uneven, but I'm going to try to get it the best I can without too many burn spots. So now all the pieces are installed and it's looking pretty good. The charred pieces turned out really nice. Got a real nice rich black, except where there was the knots. Those didn't burn, so those kind of popped through. Adds a little interest, I guess. And then the pieces that were torched, they kind of turned out like I didn't want them to. You can see where I have some heavy burn spots. I didn't really want that. I wanted them to mostly look like this board right here, how you just see the grain. But even here, the corners, I was getting a little charred. So, oh well, it is what it is. I'll have to get a little more practice on that, and then maybe eventually do a whole video once I figure out some tricks on how to make that look better. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is work on the little chevron pieces. When I measured them, they all are about 2 3/4 inches wide. So I'm just going to cut a bunch of strips at 2 3/4 inches. They'll be longer than this, and then I can go through and custom cut all of the 45s where they all meet and make sure they fit. Because I'm sure some of them are a little off because my triangles weren't all exact. So I'll start doing that next. Alright, check it out. There's all those pieces after I sanded them. They look really cool. especially that piece there with all that texture popping through. Looks really nice. Now the reason I have not installed them yet is because they're a really tight fit. They're kind of hard to pull out, and I don't think I'm ready to put them in yet because I'm not sure how these charred black pieces are going to react to when I clear coat them. I don't know if it's going to smear black soot everywhere or what. So I'm going to go ahead and take these pieces back out, and then I'll add 1 coat of poly to the little black pieces, being careful not to get it on the wood out here. And that way it'll be nice and protected, so when I eventually do the whole thing, it shouldn't smear everywhere. So while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and work on my side trim pieces. Now I don't know if I have to rip some wood or if I already have some. I'll have to go check. But basically it'll be little pieces of wood, about a 1/4 inch thick or so. And they'll be 1.5 inches wide. And just to cover the 3/4 inch tabletop and the 3/4 inch wood that I've added to it. And I'll treat them the same way, where I'll paint them silver and then sand them so that the texture pops through. And then, you know, of course, glue and nail them on. And then they'll have that really cool, just a little ring of color around the entire thing to kind of tie in the little chevrons. I think it'll look nice. And then I'll be able to add some clear coat. Let's do the entire thing with a couple of coats. And in the meantime, while that clear coat's drying, I can take the base off, or I might actually do it before I clear coat it. And it just has a couple of screws holding it on. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and paint it. I'm going to paint it semi-gloss black. Should look nice. Then I can put the entire thing back together and it'll look awesome. So let me get started and I'll show you how I do all that. Alright, and there it is all finished, put together. It looks pretty cool. Got the base painted semi-gloss black, so it kind of blends in with the black triangle pieces up here. And then the top has 3 coats of poly on there. And it's a semi-gloss, but has a little bit of sheen to it, and it really made the wood grain and the torched wood pop. It looks really cool. So it's got that mix of industrial and kind of like rustic put together. Also, I'm a huge fan of the silver distress painted chevron in the middle. It works really well with the borders painted the same way. Looks pretty cool. And it ended up being a fairly simple project. The only part that was a little tricky was actually fitting the chevrons. And that was because I didn't really measure anything, especially the black pieces. They were all just cut off, so I kind of put them down, and then all these had to be custom cut. So some of them aren't quite exactly 45-degree angles, but I was just trying to use up scraps. So if you're going to do this on your own, go ahead and measure all your angles. It'd be a lot easier. But it turned out pretty well, and I think it's going to sell. So it ended up being a real cool project.